Good morning, all. Sleep is one of the things that is less, awareness is just less among pediatricians. It is a huge topic and the specialists are there, but in the general pediatric population, the effect of sleep on growth is just under-recognized. I would hope Dr. Sitaraman would throw more light on this important subject.
Good morning, friends. I thank the organizers for inviting me over for this talk, and more so preponing my talk to a time when sleep can be well understood, because it was initially post-lunch. I think they would have slept through my talk, and that would have been very convenient for me to make them understand that sleep is important post-sleep or post-lunch also. Sleep is one thing which we all been doing and practicing, and still at the most neglecting it. And neglect in the sense, especially in these days when our children are driven for excellence by the parents. So right from their preschool, they are pushing their children to excel in all things, and they keep the timetable so tight that the child does not understand whether the sleep is a part of their daily schedule. Yeah? I hope by the time we finish off my lecture, we will be able to convince with some data to present to the parents something alarming issues which are coming up, especially when it comes to even development of the child. So, sleep as such we find is defined as a behavioral state characterized, everyone knows about it, reduced motor activity, decreased interaction with external environment, specific posture and easy reversibility. But you find, so this one, specific posture, how many of you find all the children actually lying down and sleeping? Yeah? Most of the time they will be either on a couch or sofa in not exactly the position it should be. Now why I am actually interested in noting it, that there are certain periodicity here. A good sleep should have adequate duration, appropriate timing, good quality, regularity and absence of sleep disturbance or any disorders. And I am not going to the details of what the sleep is like, but we have the two components. The NREM sleep is believed to function primarily as a restful and restorative rest phase. Extremely important. Yes. And REM sleep, which is also called the dream sleep, is characterized by a desynchronized cortical activity with a low voltage, high frequency electroencephalograms. REM is typically thought to play a role in consolidating and integrating memories. Now this will be the core message will go throughout my talk, as well as the development of central nervous system, both maintaining and establishing new connections, particularly during the time period of early brain development. So you have to have a child who has to have a very good quality sleep when he is going to integrate and consolidate the memories he has. But does sleep have any kind of a developmental issues? We start with a very simple thing, like a regular consistent bedtime, comfortable sleep environment and appropriate sleep onset association. What does it tell you? One of the core things which a child should be brought up with a sense of social security. The child has to have unpredictability. If a child sleeps in a very comfortable zone regularly, the child is like to have some sense of security in him. And that is a core message, because if you go up considering some of the developmental issues, the child has to go in a very secure environment. Then what are the basic problems? In NREM, parasomnias are characterized by impaired arousal from deep NREM. I am just giving these definitions for your understanding before we go to the talk. And they include sleepwalking, sleep terrors, confusion. These are things which can happen in REM state. When REM sleep, there will be nightmares, behavior disorders, sleep paralysis. And in sleep wake transition disorders, which is very important, the rhythmic movement disorders, sleep starts and sleep talking. Many of the children, maybe parents would be bringing some of the videos of these movement disorders, even especially those children with the development disorders, saying that probably these are actually some form of an epileptic fits. So you have to be very sure that you are not handling them. How many of you heard of Dushan smile? Dushan smile is not related to your DMD. Yeah? Dushan smile, many of the children you would have seen that they will be smiling at the sleep. When the sleep is actually emotionally driven, happy sleep will be a Dushan smile. So if I am smiling like that, that's a fake smile. But I smile with the crow feet around my eyes, that is just Dushan smile. So in future, if anyone smiles with a broad smile with the crow feet around the eyes, you know the smile is very natural. And this is the natural smile. Why is it important? Is that when the child smiles in the sleep, you are rest assured child has got a very positive vibrations right in the brain, which are predictive of a good emotional development of a child. Okay, let's come to it. Now, sleep and memory we find is responsible for reactivation of hypothalamic neocortical circuits, which are activated during waking period. Now, REM is consolidation of this new learning into a long-term memory. Millman way back found that the school age children showed greater sleep dependent extraction of explicit or declarative knowledge of rules that govern implicit procedural tasks than do the adults. I will come to the explanation of explicit and implicit later on, but you should understand explicit is one where the child retains a kind of or revises that what the child has learned during the sleep and it stays in the brain. Implicit is something like a skill. 2019, when they investigated the high inter-individual differences in infant sleep duration and fragmentation, while eye tracking, they found less time awake during the night in early life but comes associated with better performance of a working memory task. So children who have got a very sound sleep are likely to have a better memory. And this observed improvement because of increased deep sleep. And sometimes we come to it, daytime nap is directly related to declarative memory performance. So the younger siblings who are sleeping in the afternoon for 1 or 2 hours is also helpful for the child's memory. Now that is very important. Now in this fast ridden world, people have, I still remember there was in our primary schools, in the play schools, there used to be sleep time also, the sleep period. Or the teacher used to say, all of you put down your heads on the desk, sleep. So whether we were wanting to sleep or not, we are supposed to put down a head and sleep. Or those things have gone now. Now parents said, oh, we don't pay for the child to be sleeping. You should be doing some activities. You know, that activity has to be ingrained into the child, which is sadly not there. That's a parental perception. 15-month-old infants who had napped for 4 hours after a language exposure remembered the general grammatical pattern of the language 24 hours later also. Yeah, while the infants without napping showed no evidence of remembering. So even at 15 months, if you have told some child something and the child goes off to sleep, he is likely to remember that faster. So I hope this message goes down very clear to all of you, that teach something and the child put to sleep, don't keep him awake and he will come up brighter. So we will cutting short. Infants frequent napping may play an essential role in establishing long-term memories. But there is one more thing. Sometimes we find that wakefulness and not sleep promote generalization of word meanings in older children. In older children, we do want the child to remember what is being told. So wakefulness where the implicit memory comes in. Now it's speculated that finding are contrast, but it's still preferred that sleep dependent consolidation is very important for all the children. So how does memory getting processed in our children? We find that in explicit memory, that's a memory which the child is taking at
what shall we say, the learning part of the child when he takes to learning words, poems, whatever it is during this time, and it will be reinforced when the child sleeps. But when it comes to something like learning like a skill, learning a bicycle or learning some art, the child is going to have an implicit, and that happens during awake time. Yeah, so there are two aspects of this memory. So which is affected? This is what is affected while we are going to do sleep, the declarative events, facts, semantics, episodics, while non-verbal learned skills will be for implicit. So explicit memory is what which child right from the beginning is supposed to learn, goes well, is compounded by the sleep pattern. Learning and memory are closely connected to sleep throughout life in a bidirectional way. So I am not talking about child development alone. Sleep affects all of us. Yeah, and and also for learning and memory. Not only does sleep consolidate previously learned information in infants, a high quality also facilitates subsequent learning. I don't know if I think we'll come to it later on. But we find that in 40 preschool children, they had a game called memory. They made to remember 9 to 12 cartoon images and all that. The children took an afternoon nap of an average of 1 hour or 15 minutes, or sometimes were gently kept awake. And they recalled 10% more of the item's location following a nap. So if you have learned something and go off to sleep, you are likely to recall it more than if you have kept yourself awake. So a periodic nap is extremely important. Why is it that we find even in early adolescence, the cortical basal ganglia connections play an important role in mediating the effect of insufficient sleep on the cognitive and affective functions. The highlights that the importance of early sleep intervention at young ages to improve long-term memories, because we find that structural properties of anterior temporal lobe might contribute to the effect of insufficient sleep on crystallized intelligence, and this effect can last for 2 years. So mind you, if the child has been having chronic sleep problems, the child's effect on the memory can last up to 2 years. So people say, oh no, he is only during examination days. For that examination days, the child has been for 1 to 2 months has been crushing on the sleep, decreasing the amount of sleep. Not only is the child losing it, but that the effect of that learning is going to affect him for next 2 years to come through. So that is what we have to be very careful about, that we do not disturb the sleep rhythm. So I have been asking my patients to have a very consistent, constant sleep rhythm and period throughout their educational times, early adolescence. We start off, they say no, the exam time we have to study hard. Okay, go ahead, study, don't worry about it, but make it fixed. You can't sleep at 9 o'clock sometimes, you can't sleep at 10 o'clock sometimes or 11 o'clock sometimes and have the same results. You have a consistent period of time to let this. And simple example, I give it by the way they work on the laptops. They're very, very happy with the laptop, simile. See, the laptop sometimes goes on to sleep mode on its own. How many of you experience that? While working for long hours, the laptop goes on sleep mode. It knows when to sleep. The human brain does not. That's what we have to give. And, okay, we have already done that. So, what are the ramifications of a sleep deprivation? The neurocognitive deficits of attention, memory, learning, hyperactivity, deficits in executive functioning, daytime sedation, very common, psychological depression, mood liability, irritability, or positional anxiety, fatigue, weakness, all the keep on find that she has sleep deprivation. Now coming to memory, I will skip this too much of the thing. We come to the declarative memory, which is also the explicit memory, which I feel is one which should constantly go through our minds, and it finds that recalling information from an explicit memory involves a conscious effort. So even after you have learned something, gone off to sleep, you are more likely to recall it much clearer and faster than when you have read something and stayed awake. So if you are doing something, you are wanting to learn something very intensely, want to remember that after a good kind of an academic exercise, you take a short nap, you are likely to remember that. So the explicit memory is governed by communication between prefrontal cortex and amygdala and hippocampus. You will realize the significance of this when we come to the later part of the talk. The prefrontal cortex is thought to be necessary to store and retrieve long-term memories. That is where it goes through. Okay, I'll skip that too. Yeah, and what are the possible mechanisms we try to explain? Yeah, the collagen concentration and expression of NMDA receptor decreases. The orexin concentration decreases, which degrades conditions for potentiation and weakening the transmission of excitation and trisynapatic, especially hippocampus. We are targeting on hippocampus here. And dopamine concentration decreases. We all know what can happen if dopamine goes down there. And these weaken the voluntary and involuntary attentions and degrade the processing of sensory information. So whatever information comes through, if dopamine goes down, is not processed very well in the brain. The second aspect, after the memory comes the emotions. Sleep stimulates creative thinking, and inadequate sleep will lead to negative and less positive emotions. These are fairly recent, people are coming up with this. The impact of sleep on next day mood and emotion is thought to be particularly affected by REM sleep. How many of you have got up early in the morning and said, "Aaj mood acha nahi hai," or mood is very good. Yeah, and what is the usual question in the offices or in your workplace? Yeah, didn't you sleep well yesterday? Isn't it? That has been a conscious way of asking us, didn't you sleep yesterday very well? Yeah, they didn't sleep very well, and that's where they had this kind of a problem where the REM sleep or hyperlimbic hypoactive dorsolateral prefrontal activation and the normal function of the prefrontal cortex may explain the adaptive role of coping with the emotional events. So if you have a tense emotional day, you should have a good sleep, otherwise morning also next day you are going to be very uncomfortable. A study of premature infants found that premature infants with sleep state transitions characterized by shifts between the quiet sleep and wakefulness at gestation age of 37 weeks exhibit the best emotional and cognitive development in later childhood. Now here for those all the neonatologists, it has to be a message to go through that developmental supportive care supports this concept, comes from this. If the child at preterm babies is actually sleeping very well, soundly, given accommodative environment and the positioning, the child is going to sleep well and has a better emotional and cognitive development in later life. And this is just the chart which shows how much sleep recommendation is there, yeah, and efficiency on sleep quality and wakenings is there. Yeah, the daytime sleep is also there in smaller children, which slightly goes down, and the night time keeps up. Now, show that there is a better self-regulation of strategies and emotional in retuned sleep versus sleep restricted conditions. The diminished amygdala prefrontal connectivity was also found after sleep deprivation, which suggested there is a lack of cognitive control over emotional brain. Functional MRI has also pulled up something which has shown that the mesolimbic reward brain network is in response to positive emotional pictures. Now, since we have got now electrophysiology and even imaging facilities, we are able to point out what areas are actually which is getting affected. 3 studies on developmental scores, very interesting. This is the latest one. Right from 2005, they found that the greater number of awakenings was negatively correlated with Bailey's score. Gibson et al. Found that 11 to 13 months of children who had greater sleep efficiency or longer proportion sleep had a better cognitive problem solving skills on age ASQs. Recent this thing in China, which they did a very extensive study, frequent bed nighttime awakenings reported by caregivers were associated with lower MDI and BSID between 12 to 30 months. So, sleep for infants is extremely important if you want their developmental scores to go up. Long-term twin studies suggest assist with the association with sleep-wake consolidation with 6, 8, 30 months. The language skills, they found that the poor sleep consolidation during first 2 years of life may be at risk for language learning in later childhood. There are now all the developmental clinics are facing problems with parents coming, my child is not speaking well, he does not understand the language, the pragmatics is not okay, semantics is not okay, but have you put the child to a good sleep pattern early onset in the first 2 years of life? If you have not, because they start putting the children right from 1.5 years into a kind of a caregiver preschool sort of thing. Now, this study found that the sleep distance from the age 2 years onwards were associated with smaller gray matter volumes, and the global trend also shows this. But why these structural changes? Are we? How many? 2 minutes? Okay, I'll go quickly then. So, sleep is known to facilitate the reorganization of memories, but its impact on perceptual semantic trend in early development is known. Then comes OSA, that is sleep apneas. We find that fragmentation and hypoxic damage may be related, but it is known to clearly show that there is a volume deficit in the prefrontal cortex. And sleep problems could be delayed in reaching peak of cortical thickness. Now, it is sleep deprivation can cause a thinning of the cortical thickness also. And these are the areas affected, and when these areas are affected, we found there is a decision making, impulse control, memory and mood regulation are compromised. And a strong article which is going through the adolescent brain cognitive development ABCD study showed us attention, memory and innovation controls, and with the persistence of 2 years, a long term impact later on can cause depression, anxiety and impulsive behaviors, where the children are not going through a 9 to 12 hours of sleep. Does it affect health? You have discussions of health. You find all these children who are sleeping late may have obese because of decrease in leptin or increase in ghrelin values. This for immunity, we found that some of the markers of IL-6 rise up, which shows that certain inflammatory processes are more in sleep deprived. Now, this last one is very important for us, those who are thinking about autism spectrum disorders. We found is more likely have falling sleep, and the hippocampus is critical for learning and memory and changes, and that is why we find it is associated with poor sleep patterns in the adult children. And circadian related parameters such as sleep quality and circadian stability and amplitude affects the phase processing. Now, phase processing what we always are interesting for autistic children, and if it is there, we find that poor sleep pattern in a child with 12-month-old will have poor phase processing. In summary, what are the areas which the sleep deprivation can affect us? Physical growth, because growth hormones are not activated, cognitive functioning, memory consolidation, information processing, emotional regulation. Sleep will regulate the emotions, promote emotional resilience and reduce the risk behavior. Attention and concentration, attention and focus on crucial learning. Physical health, for it supports the immune systems, and behavioral mental health. Sleep deprivation in children has been linked to increased risk of behavioral problems, mental health issues, and it can contribute to hyperactivity, impulsivity, aggression, all those features which were discussed in the morning regarding all the behavioral problems. So, in short, if the sleep deprivation is there right from beginning of life, in the first 2 years, it will affect the memory, cognition, even the cortical thickness is taken over, that structural change happens. But in the later on, you find if the pre-adolescent, adolescent, if the sleep deprivation occurs, they lead to huge number of issues regarding attention, concentration and even behavioral issues. So whatever a child is trying to do, at least impose upon the parents that their children should have a good night's sleep, which was the traditional recommendation. Let the child sleep to wake up to a bright future. Thank you for the listening.
Thank you, sir, for introducing us to this nice concept that children who sleep or rather nap more, they learn more. Hope our postgraduates don't catch up on it.
Thank you so much, sir, for that awakening talk on sleep. We have a question from the floor. At what age co-sleeping should be discouraged in India? When to give a separate room for boys and girls / girls in our country?
Again, can you repeat it?
At what age co-sleeping should be discouraged in our country? Co-sleeping, parents sleeping with the kid.
Co-bedding, you mean?
Yeah, sir.
Co-bedding. No, co-bedding is a problem mainly seen in our kind of cultural scenario. But we do recommend that it should not be there as much as possible, because you are not introducing a good sleep rhythm in the child. Because the child gets up immediately, the parents are there to pat the child, pat the child to put the child to sleep. So that becomes a habituation. So every time the child gets up, they will need some kind of habituation in that. That is not recommended, because child will keep on getting up. So preferably below 6 years, above 6 years is not recommended.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
And one delegate is curious to know if sleepwalking and sleep talking occasionally is accepted. Is it okay? Occasional sleepwalking and sleep talking.
See, I told you there itself, these kind of problems are likely to be taken as sleep interruptions. Occasional means there must be some kind of emotional disturbance, or when the REM sleep has got activated there. But if it is repeated, it's going to hamper the child's cognition and memory. So it should be taken seriously.
Thank you so much, sir. The messages were well driven even to us as adults. I thank the chairperson and the speaker for that wonderful session on sleep.